Hello, I'm Father Howe. We're here at Holy Cross and just continuing our teaching series on the Holy Mass. I hope you found some benefit in the films that you've seen so far. Know that there's many more coming as we're trying to delve more deeply into the gift of the Eucharist and the Holy Mass here in this Jubilee year of 2025. I'm really thinking about the way that the Mass always contains more. I love that sense that there's always more with God, always more with our faith, always more with the mysteries of His love. And I was thinking about the fact that the Mass is always the Mass, no matter where it's celebrated, no matter what the circumstances. It could be a very, very simple Mass. It could be a very, very solemn and extravagant Mass. It could be a papal Mass. It could be a Mass in solitary confinement. It could be a Mass behind enemy lines in a military situation. So there's many, many places and ways where the Mass can be celebrated, but it is always the Mass. And we're so grateful for our beautiful churches here in Northeast Minneapolis. I know in past years we've shared some sacred spaces of Northeast films on this YouTube channel. Encourage you to look back to those, but also maybe in the future we'll be able to do more of those as well. But it's a great reminder that the church building is the natural place, the fitting place, the place that is built for the worship of God. And so the furniture of the church reflects the meaning of the Mass, reflects the shape of the liturgy, reflects the purpose for which we gather as the Christian community. Now, although there are many activities that take place in the Mass, for example, devotions and quiet prayer and confessions and stations of the cross, there are many, many occasions that take place in church buildings. The Holy Mass is really the heart and center of what the Mass is for. It's because at the heart of every church is the altar. The altar is a sign of the place where the sacrifice is offered. It also reminds us of the table upon which Christ offered the Last Supper. And it reminds us actually of every time we sit at a meal to be mindful of the connection of the food that we take to the gift and sustenance that we have in the Holy Eucharist. I wanted to go through a few distinctions of types of Masses just to remind you that you're probably familiar with more of these than you may be aware of. There are Masses on Sunday. That's really the principal Mass in our experience of the Holy Mass. Could be Saturday evening anticipatory Mass, but very often our Masses on Sunday morning or Sunday midday, Sunday into the evening. The Lord's Day Mass, it's a fuller expression. It often includes an extra reading. It often includes more songs and the prayer of the Creed. In the festive seasons, it includes the Gloria, usually more music. So that's a Sunday Mass. It's really the heart and soul of what the Mass is about. But there's also the beautiful gift of the daily Mass. In the Roman Catholic Church, there's a tradition of the daily offering of the sacrifice of the Mass. Here at Holy Cross, for example, we have Mass at 6:45, Monday through Friday. We also have an evening Mass at 6 o'clock on Wednesday evening. We have some daily Masses also at St. Hedwig and on holy days at different places and times. So it's a great reminder that the Mass is something that can also be with us in our daily journey. It doesn't just stay on Sunday, but indeed it overflows into the rest of the week. So that's the distinction between Sunday Mass and daily Mass. There's also a wonderful distinction between a feast day Mass and a ferial Mass. Ordinary days when there's not much extra going on the calendar, there's no saint to celebrate, there's no special season, we simply call that a ferial day, as opposed to a Mass that has a feast that's assigned. There are different levels of feasts. We speak of optional memorials, obligatory memorials, feasts, and then solemnities. But there is a beautiful intuition that the church has that not all days are created equally. Sunday is always a kind of feast throughout the year. Even in the Lenten season, there is a festive quality to the Sunday Mass. But the ferial days of the church's year give us a kind of quieter breathing space and an ability to ponder and give thanks for the mystery of God's love, which is with us on the most ordinary of days. There's also a distinction that we might make between the new Mass and the old Mass. That is, the Novus Ordo, the Mass that's part of the reforms of the Second Vatican Council, often called the Mass of Pope St. Paul VI, or the Mass of St. John the 23rd, the Mass which was the preconciliar Mass, the traditional Latin Mass, sometimes spoken of as the Tridentine Rite, or the traditional Mass, the Mass of the Council of Trent. Great reminder here is that what's old is not necessarily bad, what's new is not necessarily better. These have been ways that the Church celebrates her prayers, and they reach both back and forward and in the present. We don't have very many opportunities to experience the extraordinary form or traditional Latin Mass in our parish, but we have done through the years, and on occasion we do have feast days that are hosted, and just want you to be aware that this is a venerated and profound part of our tradition. A neighboring parish at All Saints, you can go and experience the traditional Latin Mass in its fullness and in the various days of the church's year. But it's a great reminder that we need to realize that the church is continuity across space and time. The church is always leading us towards unity. Another distinction I might make in the Mass is between what we call sometimes a high Mass and a low Mass. That is a Mass that really has a lot of extra trappings in music and in solemnity and in servers and in the movement around the altar, and a Mass that might be much more plain and simple. Probably the easiest distinction to show is here at Holy Cross, we have a 7:30 Mass, which is a very simple, what I might call a low Mass. And we have at 9:30 a very sung Mass with our choir, with our organ. It's a very full Mass, and a lot of the parts are sung. It's a reminder that the Mass is always the Mass. Neither is more the Mass than the other, but in a certain way, we see the breadth and the variety of ways that the Mass can be expressed as the heart of our Christian prayer. One other distinction might be between a sung Mass and a recited Mass. Largely that has to do with the prayers of the priest. Is the priest saying the prayers, or is he singing the prayers? Are the people singing along, or are they merely in their places speaking the responses back? Again, the 9:30 Mass, our principal Mass, our choral Mass, we often speak of as a sung Mass, sometimes a high Mass. It's a great reminder that we have a reason for joy and exuberance, and so we praise our God. One thing that I might encourage us all to be aware of is, as Dr. Sam Bachman will lead us into a greater reflection on, we're not just meant to sing when we're at Mass. We're meant in a certain full way to sing the Mass. And that's a beautiful opportunity we have to do on our feast days, and especially at that 9:30 sung Mass here at Holy Cross. I hope that what you've drawn from this conversation today is really that the Mass has so much more than meets the eye. And it's a reminder that the Mass is the Mass, no matter where it's celebrated. I've celebrated Masses in homes or at the bedside of someone who's dying. I've celebrated Masses while I'm camping in the Rocky Mountains or in incredible places out in the middle of nowhere. But it's a great reminder that the Mass is always that abiding gift. It's always tied to Christ's intention. It's always a pouring forth of his love. And it's always a place where he is efficaciously made present, both in his word and in his Eucharist. So from all of us here at Holy Cross, wish you a very blessed Lenten season. Let's open our hearts to the full gift of the Mass, that we could go deeper into a knowledge and love of all that the Lord has given us.